Captain America Brave New World is dropped in theaters, so it's time to talk spoilers. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know what you thought about the film. This is a spoiler review. Spoilers is in the title of the video, the thumbnail, so feel free to spoil away. No need for any spoiler warnings. Also, you can skip ahead. I'll have chapter markers. It's going to be kind of thematic the way that I talk through it, talking about different elements of the film, different characters. So whatever you want me to talk about, skip ahead right down there. Let's get started. And just to give my general thoughts on the film with a couple of days to process it and while being able to talk about spoilers, essentially it's a movie that was kind of exactly what I expected while having some pleasant surprises inside of it. Because of who they hired to direct it and the writers and the reshoots, whether it was 3 weeks or months of it, they were corrective reshoots that Giancarlo Esposito was hired a year after principal photography, and they added in a new main villain that's featured prominently all throughout the trailers, that appears all throughout the movie. They took wrestler Seth Rollins, cut him out of the film. The main villain leader, the actor, said that he basically shot all of his stuff twice. Whether it was 22 days of reshoots or 3 months of reshoots, they did significant corrective reshoots because what they originally made did not work. So I went into the movie expecting to kind of have another one of these duct taped together films, and I feel like I got that. There were some pleasant surprises, in particular that for the first time since Endgame, this really feels like a cohesive universe where what happens in each of the other projects matters here, but it didn't feel like homework. Like there's a tie to Black Widow, but if you haven't seen Black Widow, this movie still makes perfect sense to you. Or the whole plot is built around the Eternals, but if you didn't see Eternals, like, you can understand a thing popped up out of the ground. Like, that's the only thing you need to know. You don't need to know the nature of it other than it's this celestial thing. And you can fill in the gaps. Like, the movie makes total sense. Just weird thing popped up. That's all you need to know. And likewise, we're following up, of course, The Incredible Hulk and Civil War, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And so it feels cohesive again. But I think But perhaps to a fault, the movie itself pauses to explain to you what's happening. But on that duct tape together part, I went in with my, when you know that a movie had significant reshoots, you're kind of watching it. Do you feel that? And for the first act of the movie, I thought it felt totally seamless. Like, even though Giancarlo Esposito is very prominent, like he's the main bad guy in the opening sequence to it, it still felt like this sequence makes sense. I'm tracking along, like no sign of reshoots. And until the assassination attempt and they start the investigation, as soon as that investigation started, I felt like the movie started to spiral a little bit. And it wasn't so clear. Like, you could tell that they're trying to piece together footage from this shoot, and this original script and the rewrites. And that to me is where it started to lose me a little bit. And then the third act probably didn't change too much because they were probably always planning on doing Red Hulk. And so then that feels seamless again. But the whole middle section, it just kind of felt like we're being given information to move things along, or characters are pausing to tell us the plot. And I mean, there were just so many times where it pauses to have Harrison Ford repeat, this treaty needs to make sense. So we need Japan to do this, and Japan is doing this. Like, telling us the plot of the movie rather than showing us the plot of the movie. And then the most egregious one, we're told by leader his motivation. Like, as a person with a brain, you start piecing together, okay, Thunderbolt has been using leader. And then we meet leader, and he tells us that's what's happening and tells us his motivation and why he's angry. And we're like, okay, I'd kind of piece that together because I'm not an idiot. And then the next scene, we meet up with Giancarlo Esposito, and he tells us what happened to leader again. He tells us leader's motivation again, and it's like, right, I was already piecing that together on my own, and then leader told me, now you're telling me again. And that sort of thing where that's where you feel a movie being taped together, where instead of visuals, like movies are motion pictures, visual storytelling, instead of that progressing things forward, we're having to find other mechanisms because we're reworking what we already have and shuffling things around and adding characters. When you do that, you need to find band-aids and ways to like patch things up. How do you do that? A character stands there and tells you the plot. When you just have one person and sit down and write a good script, that's not how you do things. That's how you do things when you're trying to fix a movie that's not working. And so like in general, there's action in it that's enjoyable. The chemistry of Sam, Isaiah, and Joaquin, I thought they were a lot of fun on screen. But the actual plot, the politics, all that, I just don't think really worked. It wasn't very interesting. And once again, in the first act of the movie, I was like, okay, all right, this movie actually is much better than I was expecting it to be. This is pretty good. I see where we're going with this. And then the plot kicked in. Like when Thunderbolt, Sam, I want you to reform the Avengers. Let's work together. One thing happens. All right, Sam, you're out. I don't want to work together anymore. I was like, what? Like, I thought the movie was going to be about this complex relation. Nope. Just like that. Let's do this. Nah, just kidding. We're not doing it. That's the sort of thing that feels like a movie that's been reworked, because why would you structure it that way if it was always your plan? It's just a very odd thing to do to set up something interesting. Like, I rewatched Civil War last night. And when you watch Civil War and these movies very close together, you're like, Thunderbolt literally locked up Sam, and now he's asking him to work for him. And that's compelling and interesting. And having them immediately undo that. Just like, okay, the thing that was interesting is gone now. What are we doing? So that was like my whole experience with the movie. Like, scene that I really liked, idea that I really liked, cool action here, but a movie that just feels very rough and messy. So let's just talk about Sam Wilson as Captain America. Prior to the movie's release, this is one of like the hot button issues where, like, should they have like passed the shield on at all? Should the shield have gone to Bucky? All this different stuff, and you know, tied to the grander political context of our country and just national discussions. I've never really had an issue with Steve Rogers giving the shield to Sam. In the way the MCU is played out, to give it to Bucky, I think you need to do a lot of work because Bucky is a war criminal, and handing the shield to a war criminal, we got to do a little bit more work to like mend his public image before he should become the symbol of something. And so like it never made, like, I was always fine with that. Of course, then again, this movie kind of undoes that by the fact that without doing some of that work, Bucky is a politician. It's like, oh, okay, how does that tie into Thunderbolts? Like, what are we doing with, if Bucky's a politician, what is it? Why is he going in Thunderbolts? Like, that's kind of interesting to me, but I never had a problem with Sam getting the shield. I don't know that we should have like continued it. And if we're gonna like hand the shield to Sam, that should have been a Phase 4 movie. Like, don't do Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Don't do like, he has the shield. Now let's do but I don't want the shield TV show. I think that's like that just felt like a weird, overly long way to pass the shield over. Just do a movie right there. It's like one of our bridges, something familiar, but it is fresh and new. I think that's a good bridge project into this post-original lineup, new era. But they made it a TV show instead, and I think that was probably less than ideal way to do all of this. And in the movie, I think he works. I don't think Sam is quite as compelling as a Steve Rogers, because Steve Rogers, when you just do a period piece film, that kind of carries and gives it an interesting freshness to it. And then when you take this man out of time, man from pre-World War II and World War II, and drop him into the modern era, he goes from this black and white, Nazis bad, I'm working for my government to fight Nazis, and put him in this very morally ambiguous time. That's interesting and compelling. And Sam doesn't quite have that. there's not quite that hook to him. He's like he's like a really good guy. He's a solid soldier. He's interesting. He's entertaining, but he doesn't quite have that hook that elevates him the way that Steve Rogers did. But and I think he's an enjoyable lead for the film. I don't think he held things back. I wasn't watching the movie like lingering on that or anything like that. The issues with the film are absolutely not Sam Wilson or Anthony Mackie. It's all the other stuff. So anyone that like lingers on like, man, Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, it's hold this movie back. No, that's not what happened. You can look at the reviews. That's not what anyone is singling out because he's interesting. He's fits the story that they're telling in just the right way, and they put him in an ensemble of characters that the ensemble works in his entertainment. Next big one, you got to talk about Thunderbolt Ross. This is an interesting one because they had to recast because William Hurt died. And William Hurt, Harrison Ford are very different actors with very different energies. So it's kind of a little bit difficult to see the continuation there, but that's kind of always been the case with MCU recasts. They've intentionally seem to have not cared at all if actors have the same vibe. So Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle, totally different vibes. Of course, Edward Norton to Mark Ruffalo, totally different vibes. And so it can be difficult to see the continuity when they do that. And this one in particular, because we haven't seen much Thunderbolt Ross in almost a decade. So when you come back with someone like Harrison Ford that is such a movie star and so identifiable with such a different vibe, it really feels like a different character, even though it's not. This is a continuation of the same guy from Incredible Hulk, same guy from Civil War, same guy that made some brief appearances in Endgame as well as Black Widow. And I think to some extent that probably helps the character a bit in that Harrison Ford is a little bit more of a naturally charismatic leading man. This is one of the biggest movie stars of all time because he just has that natural charm to him. And when you're trying to do a Thunderbolt that's trying to grow and be more likable, Harrison Ford has some of that, just like inherent likability, relatability. And William Hurt is really good as just this like intense, very easy to buy him as General Ross, this intense guy that is single-minded. You buy into that. And I think Ford is able to bring maybe a little bit more of the showman that a politician needs to be able to get votes. It would be harder to see the Thunderbolt, William Hurt's Thunderbolt, get that. So throughout the film, I think you get, of course, a much more layered Ross in this film because he's trying to change, but unwilling to accept responsibility. Like he wants to be different and not be the Hulk hunter that he was and not be the guy that split up the Avengers by just throwing down the book. He doesn't want to be that anymore. He wants to be someone that works with people. But he's unwilling to accept the consequences of being the villain for a long time. He was doing bad things for what he perceived of as the greater good, but he was doing bad things. Therefore, like in the movie, he's the one that really has the arc, that he wants to make things right with his daughter, but never, like he wants the benefits, like doing all these things he's done and taking advantage of Leader and manipulating him and all this stuff has gotten him to be the president. So he's reaped the rewards of all of his behaviors. But now he wants his daughter to forgive him, and because he's changed. I'm not that guy anymore, but I'm still reaping all the benefits of being that guy. And so I think somewhat like in there, I think you get a little bit of the heart of the film is that he has to, in the end, has to face the consequences of his actions. That like maybe he really was trying to do good things. He really was trying to keep them out of war and do all this good stuff. But at some point in time, to truly be the person that he's trying to be, you have to own you were the bad guy. You were very much the bad guy. And you get that in the end of the film. It's like those are some of those little flavors to it that does the journey fully work and does the storyline fully work? No, I don't like the Leader stuff. I don't think it really works. And the politics, I don't think really work. But I think there's something satisfying about seeing Ross in the raft and okay with it, and at peace with it. The main plot and the leader, and this is the stuff for me where the movie just really didn't work. They set up what I think is actually a really good, intriguing setup. That celestial thing pops up out of the ocean. They discover a new mineral on it that could change the world, adamantium, both for comic nerds that are like, adamantium, Wolverine bones, yeah! And just in the world, the context of the series itself of a big thing happened, how did the world respond to it? Like, it feels cohesive again. And you're doing real politics. A president is trying to figure out, how do I negotiate a treaty so we all benefit from this and we don't go to war over it? That's really interesting and compelling. And then you get into all of the conspiracy stuff about the leader, and the problem it runs into is that leader is supposed to be this extraordinarily brilliant mastermind, but the script itself is not brilliant. A writer can only write as smart as themselves. Their master plan can only be as brilliant as they are brilliant. And then if you take that idea that they're limited by their own intelligence, and then you have a movie that they microwaved the script, shot it before it was actually good enough, and then they reshot it and had to fix it, suddenly we're trying to duct tape together a master plan. And one of the key pieces in our master plan ends up being a reshot character. The guy that's like driving, who was hired to do all of this stuff and delivering exposition and sending them on certain paths, it's Giancarlo Esposito, who was hired a year after principal photography. He was hired like when the movie was supposed to come out. That's not good. So they had to do all these reshoots to add him in. And you're trying to craft a master plan. And you want to, like, something that's really intriguing, feels earned, set up, payoff. And if you're like, okay, this doesn't work, I have to cut all this out. Let's move this over here. We gotta, how do we fill the gap? Let's get this go over here. When you do that stuff, that it's tough to do that when you're trying to have an engaging mystery. So you end up having this whodunit that just doesn't work at all. So we're watching the movie, music starts playing, and 5 people in the room go pew, 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 and start shooting. And you immediately go, okay, mind control. They heard the song and they start shooting. Why? Because all of us have seen a movie before. And this is like a trope. The mind-controlled person triggered by music. It's not this fresh, wild, crazy thing. Music plays, they stand up, start firing, mind control. Every person in the audience knows exactly what's happening. And then they're like, well, why did Isaiah Bradley suddenly turn like that? And like, of course you arrest them. Of course that's what you do. And you immediately start an investigation. And the first thing you do is look at the footage, and every single person that starts shooting at some point in time has flashing lights in their face. And so anyway, once again, the footage shows that they behaved one way before the music and they look different afterwards. And every single one of those person had like a bright flashing light in their face right before all this happened. I wonder if this could mean something. Like just extraordinarily like dumb conspiracy theory stuff. And there's like scenes in it where Sam goes to Thunderbolt Ross and he's like, it wasn't him. I think there's mind control going on. And Thunderbolt Ross is like, mind control? Are you stupid? Stop being ridiculous. Like, mind control is not even new to this franchise. The 2 previous entries in this franchise featuring Sam and Sam's best friend, the guy that is alive that Sam is currently kind of most tied to, maybe besides Joaquin, Bucky, a guy that is not a secret person. In the movie, he is running for Congress. He is an Avenger. He has saved the planet before. Like, everybody knows who this guy was. Thunderbolt was one of the people tracking down Bucky, who was mind controlled for decades. Very public information. Everybody knows it. Like, what, mind control? A mind-controlled assassin in our universe? How preposterous, Sam. Why would you even suggest something like that? Like, it's that sort of thing where you're like, what? And you go throughout the movie, and in front of our childlike Black Widow, who sees mind control happen. She sees it happen. So everybody knows there's mind control. We've seen video evidence. Ladies saw it with her own eyes. We've done research. We walked into a room and there's like all this stuff that is recorded. We get like 80% of the way through the movie and they do a news broadcast. We're like, Isaiah Bradley now in solitary confinement and might face the death penalty. What? Like I understand the legal process, just because people over here know something doesn't mean guy gets released. Like, I understand it takes time for him to get released and there's a lot of moving parts. But in the movie itself, they're presenting it as if that's still a ticking clock, as if there's a chance that everyone is going to forget about mind control, as if that, like, just like these sort of things where, what? Like, did you even stop to think about this? It doesn't, it's dumb stuff. We're doing brilliant mastermind. Who did it? What's going on here? But without any wit, without any cleverness, without, it never feels like the screenwriter is smarter than you and me. It never feels like the screenwriter is ahead of us. In fact, it always feels like the screenwriter is behind us. We're piecing together what's going on with Leader and Thunderbolt, and then they tell us. And then Leader tells us. And then Giancarlo Esposito tells us. We're like, right, I already know. I'm not stupid. Did you think you needed to explain this? And then we figure out, yeah, Isaiah Bradley, he's good. Like, he's still in solitary, but he's good. Like, clearly, mind control. All the evidence right here. This has not been burned up. The evidence has not been tampered with. It's right here for everyone to see in multiple ways, multiple formats. But the writers don't seem to know that, like, that matters. So they go, well, he could still get death row. No, he couldn't. What are you talking about? Like, that sort of thing. If you're going to claim that, if you're going to go with he's a mastermind that's always way ahead of everyone else, you have to have a really smart script where you feel smarter than the audience. You're always ahead of the audience. And so there's a series of moments where you go, oh yeah, oh, oh crap, man, we fell into the trap. And there's just none of that in this movie. Like, very early on, you feel like you're piecing it together. Like, yeah, I know exactly kind of where this is headed. Like, I know Leader's in the movie, so how's Leader doing all of this? And then when we get to actually seeing Leader, I think the design is just, like, bad. It just, like, it's not a good look. And they do a number of these, like, whenever you have a guy with, like, a weird brain, it reminds you of, like, makeup effects from the original Star Trek show, if you watched it like I did. But it just, like, it had that sort of vibe to it. I didn't think it was a good design. And when he's in shadows, I didn't think it looked great. We get to the end of the movie, he's standing in broad daylight, like, with his weird look and his weird brain head. It's like, this is not great. This is not probably the best way to do all of this. So, like, that's so much of watching the movie. That was my frustration and experience with some of this stuff. And so it's cool that they're finally bringing him back, like, on a conceptual level, and Thunderbolt Ross is having to deal with things. But the execution and the quality of the writing, it kind of going back to what I said before, like, maybe the original shooting draft had a really great concept to it. I mean, they didn't think movies were good, say to fix it. So, like, I don't know why they greenlit that and shot that, or was just lacking action and went to try to fix the action and broke the plot. I don't know, but it's really difficult to have a well-crafted master plan from a movie where you had a script so bad you had to reshoot the thing. Isaiah Bradley. So my favorite character in the movie is Isaiah Bradley. And I think this is like the untapped potential of the movie right here. That you have the forgotten Captain America, someone that feels hurt, deeply wounded by their country, And they're trying to, like, through Sam, some healing is being done. And trust is being built. And then everything happens. And you gotta go, okay, that's compelling. Like, right there, it's a character-based story that ties into the themes, the plot, and everything like that. And they don't go anywhere with it. Like, you have a super serum soldier, former lost Captain America, and they don't go anywhere with it. So they're in the third act of this movie, and right before we get into the Red Hulk fight, there's some line of dialogue, or they say, like, they realize what's going to happen, and they cut to our childlike Black Widow, and she kind of like has this look on her face. So I thought what was going to happen was Falcon goes to fight Red Hulk, and he's not up for the challenge on his own. She goes off and is going to get Isaiah Bradley, and I'll get to the Red Hulk fight later on, but like, it's felt like they set up Sam is fighting on his own, doing really well, and there's even a moment where, like, the shield falls down on the ground. Sam's looking rough and his wings are getting torn up. There's this moment where you kind of go, perfect moment for the classic here comes the cavalry moment. So one of the classic good, when done right, good tropes of blockbusters, here comes the cavalry. Maybe the greatest here comes the cavalry in cinematic history. Captain America is the lone Avenger battling Thanos. He's got a hammer. His shield is broken. Tightens up his shield and everything. He's getting ready. It's me versus Thanos and his army. And then he hears "on your left" in his ear. And here comes the cavalry. It worked. Doctor Strange shows up, opens these portals. Here comes the cavalry to save the day. And we get the final battle in Endgame. Like, beautiful. Here comes the cavalry. But this sort of moment happens in films all the time where you think all is lost and like, everyone, they've given it their all and they're going to keep fighting till the end. Here comes the cavalry, and then someone shows up, this shows up, people like swoop in. When done right, it works so well. And this movie set up a moment that would have been so good that Sam, like, he's going to keep, like, trying to calm down our Red Hulk president. Shield is down, Sam is wounded. And what if Isaiah Bradley, the forgotten Captain America that was harmed by his country, and in Falcon and the Winter Soldier was, like, adamantly opposed to Sam picking up that shield because he was so wounded by his country that he doesn't, like, a black man shouldn't carry that shield because of what this country's done. You have Isaiah Bradley pick up the shield in that moment and be the one that does the healing. That's a character arc. Like, you set up someone that is so wounded, and then it's the one that does the healing and the saving. And he gets his heroic moment. He gets in on the action, and you just have, like, the right moments early on to set up some dynamic between Isaiah and Thunderbolt, that there's something there that you put early on, and they almost set all of this up to have, like, a really profound, thematically, character arc-wise, satisfying, here comes the cavalry that pulls the characters together. There's a guy, like, we were just 2 scenes ago talking about the benefits of having the serum, and afterwards we joke about him not having the serum, and there's a guy pumped full of this stuff. There's actually 2 guys pumped full of this stuff in the town because we just saw Bucky. You could have had Isaiah Bradley show up, give him his hero moment, his healing moment, this fulfillment of his character arc, and the fact that if he picked up the shield in light of everything they'd said, it would be such a profound moment, powerful moment for what it would symbolize. Now he's still in prison because they didn't get the memo that he was brainwashed soon enough. And he picks up his suit at the end, which wasn't like the simple detail of his suit. I did like that. Like, the way that he cared about his suit, like, it's so personal, so idiosyncratic, like this guy that loves his suit. That suit represents something for him. I love that. But at the same time, also, you could have tied him into this other stuff. It was right there. It's right there. And instead of using this super soldier that you've established in the movie, I don't know. I just baffling choice to not have him join it. I don't know, I guess we can talk about Red Hulk now. Since we talked about Thunderbolt and we're already talking about our third act, there's a lot of discussion about whether there should have been more Red Hulk in the movie when, like, it was reported, he's only in the movie for 5 minutes. And, like, I heard that and I was like, were people expecting him to be in much more than that? Like, I understand. This is how they marketed the film. And then the other one is the shield with the hand over it. So they absolutely marketed this movie knowing that Hulk was the hook. But also, if you watch the trailers, he's only in this daytime sequence in like behind the podium and by these trees. Like, there's like 2 places, pretty clearly one sequence. And then you see enough things in the trailer to go, Red Hulk is almost certainly not saturating this movie. Like, that is not what this film is. So I wasn't surprised. I mean, I think, should you market your movie based off of this right here, if all that is like 5 minutes of your movie? Probably not. But and if you think that this is going to be your marketing, maybe like, good marketing starts with good product development. And so if this is your marketing hook, maybe also make this your movie hook. If that's what you're doing. If you're making Incredible Hulk 2, starring Captain America, maybe lean into, that people want Hulk. But I wasn't surprised at how much he's in the movie. I think it's inherently a bit of a lackluster third act when the big showdown is someone that doesn't actually want to kill anyone or destroy anything. He's just been manipulated by someone else. So it immediately kind of feels a little bit hollow. Like, it's like Hulk is always fun because he's big, just blowing stuff up. And when you're smashing the White House and throwing helicopters and jumping off monuments, it's fun to see. But we've done this. We did this in Age of Ultron, and Hulk goes crazy and he has to battle Hulkbuster because it's fun to see Hulk go wild. But that was the middle of the movie. That was not the end of the movie. And when you have your big threat at the end of the movie being this guy over here basically, poisoned this guy into turning into a Red Hulk, that you're not wanting him to be defeated. You just want him to calm down. And doesn't make for the most thrilling third act, the most thrilling use of like, it's a final boss that doesn't want to be a final boss. So it just feels empty, hollow, the whole time. Like, and likewise, a super serumless Captain America. I mean, he's got wings and he's got a shield. He's got some tech, but he does not actually have anything that meaningfully can defeat a Hulk. To do that, you have to nerf the Hulk or make Sam unbelievably overpowered, his tech unbelievably overpowered. And they even kind of do that a little bit. And I think that's what, like, you get a third act. Like, it's a fun sequence. If that had been the middle of the movie, our like 60% of the way through the movie, 40% of the way through the movie, what's our big action sequence right there? It's this Hulk sequence. I would be a lot more positive on it. But when you're making that the climax of your movie, the stakes feel really low. Because what are we really afraid of? That he'll smash some buildings and then calm down on his own and get arrested? Like, it's not like his reputation is already tarnished. That's the stakes have already happened. The consequence has already happened. And it's very unlikely that we're going to have him run around and just mashing people's heads. Like, if they went there and Red Hulk shows up at a daycare and is killing babies and stuff, like, we got a wildly different movie. But it's very unlikely that he's going to start smashing school buses and ripping it in half and see children flying out of the school bus. And Captain America's like, whoa, Red Hulk, please stop killing the babies. Like, very unlikely we're going to do that. So what do we get? What we got is Hulk in a flower garden. Throwing a guy that doesn't really get hurt and is bouncing around cars like a pinball. And you go, there's something very ill-conceived in that concept for a movie. This is not the most interesting pairing. That Who's interesting to fight Hulk? Well, a Hulkbuster is. Another Hulk is. Sam in defensive mode, just being like holding up his shield, holding up his wings, flying away. It underutilizes Hulk. Middle of the movie, probably fine. Third act, like what? I just don't even like, where were they even kind of going with it? Like, we were never going to have Thunderbolt Ross killing families. So, what is even Sam trying to stop that's interesting in the storytelling sense? The consequences have already happened. I guess maybe we talked about this a little bit. Giancarlo Esposito, I mean, he's doing his thing, like playing the intense bad guy that, you know, he's been doing since Gus 15 years ago, Gus Fring on Breaking Bad. You know, he's fun in those types of roles. There's nothing that he brings that's fresh and new or interesting. It fit the character that he was playing. The opening sequence I thought was seamless. I didn't feel the reshoots. And pretty much every sequence after that, you feel the reshoots. And some of that is probably as simple as an opening sequence. You're going right into it. It's the first thing that happens. So I think you're not trying to pull together all the plot lines and scenes and everything beforehand. It doesn't feel like you're like cutting into the middle of it. It's right there. It's what you go to. So it's probably much easier to reshoot the beginning and have it be seamless than when you're in the middle of the plot. So you get in the middle of the movie and like Sam is driving down the road and out of the blue, Giancarlo Esposito shows up and is like shooting up his car. And it's like, wait, what? We're in the middle of an accident. What just happened here? And then he gets arrested. And so then he shows up later on to give exposition from prison. Like that sort of thing. The part where you have Sam negotiating a release for a prisoner, which Sam absolutely does not have the ability to release prisoners. So I mean, like, not the over, that nitpicking when picking on things like that, but it's like I want this, and Sam goes, granted. You can have that. You can't have that. Like, Sam's negotiating for prison releases now. What? But you just could feel they're cutting things in and trying to fill in gaps. And I'm curious, like what was there beforehand? Because it's not that he's in a ton of the movie, but he is multiple sequences throughout it. And there had to be a different character in that place. Like, what was the movie beforehand that they felt they needed to fix it with this? I guess last thing to talk about, our post-credit scene. And, it's a very bland tease for the future. Like, it's kind of nice to hear them saying, like, something's coming. The evil version, the multiverse is coming. It's fun to hear that. Ooh, we're doing it. But also, we knew they were doing that because we're in the multiverse saga, and they've been teasing multiverse projects, and they've already announced Doomsday and Secret Wars. So we already knew that. So when the tease is the leader, the guy that's a mastermind, being like, hey, you know the stuff that you and the audience already know? Now, Sam knows too. It's not a great tease, since the teases are supposed to be for the audience, not for the characters in the movie. And I just felt like I appreciate that what they didn't do was do what they did in so many of these post-credit scenes of the last 3-4 years, where they're like, here's a Harry Styles. When are we going to see him again? I don't know. What are you going to do with him? I don't know. Where's that going? I don't know. Here's the voice of Blade talking to Black Knight. Are you doing that? We don't know. Do you have a script? No. Are you going to do anything with that? Probably not. Here is Hercules. When are you doing something with Hercules? Don't know. So what are we doing? So I'm glad they didn't do that again. But also, it just feels like we're... Like I rewatched Winter Soldier and all the 3 Captain America movies. First Avenger, Winter Soldier, Civil War. And all of them have a post-credit scene that is a very satisfying tease of what's to come. That the movie ends, and then there's another thing where you go, oh, that's going to be cool. And then that thing happened, and it was cool. It wasn't just like a guy in a cell in a sequence we've already kind of seen going, stuff's gonna happen. There was a tease that felt like actually whet your appetite for this thing that's coming. and it felt like we got new information. And this wasn't. Some closing thoughts. As I just mentioned, over the last couple weeks, I've rewatched the Captain America trilogy of films, and I've been re-listening to large chunks of the Reign of Marvel Studios, Reign of the MCU book that I frequently talk about in my MCU videos. And all three movies, plus that book, just reminding me of how well crafted the individual movies were and the cinematic universe felt. That there's a confidence there, and there were character arcs for every character, and then you have movies come together that felt like the culmination of all these different pieces, and you could merge multiple different genres and characters into a movie, and it felt right. And this movie would follow up 4 movies, and it would set up 4 movies effortlessly. And you just don't feel that anymore. Just like rewatching Civil War last night, being like, this movie really is as good as I remember. This wasn't just, fond memories and we're glazing the past, or, we used to be really excited about these movies because the novelty of team ups and a cinematic universe, but are they really that good? Yeah, they really are dramatically better. Most of them are dramatically better than what we've been getting recently. And just comparing Brave New World to Civil War, Winter Soldier, the level of craft, how tight the script and storytelling felt, how tight the cinematic universe felt, they're just not on the same level. Like, the only reason Civil War works is because we're invested in all of these characters. And the movie says, hey, the events of those past films, it matters. Here's a consequence. And then we see how each Avenger responds to the events of the past films, as well as the Sokovia Accords. And based on their history and their allegiances, they pick a different side. And you care. And it's compelling. And it made the audience go, who do you agree with? Which side are you on? Because they had ongoing story arcs with a universe that felt cohesive, with a set of characters that we spent a lot of time with. So we got to know them and grow with them. And it led to a conflict point where there's not an easy and obvious solution. Thus, you had a very compelling film that was also a well-crafted movie. They could carry the weight of all of that while also introducing Black Panther and Spider-Man into the MCU and setting up all these other films seamlessly. And here you have a movie that's trying to do far less and doing it far less competently. Like, I don't hate the movie. I don't think it's a total disaster. Movies like Love and Thunder, I think, are just so much more irritating. And I think that, like, Eternals is a much less watchable film because it's just so long and plodding and misguided. And it doesn't feel as choppy and messy as the Marvels. But when you compare this movie to just the previous Captain America films in this franchise, it is a distant fourth. Without question, easily so. And that's disappointing. Like, it's not, like, the issue is not that it's Sam Wilson instead of Steve Rogers. Like, that's like issue number 98 on lists of things about this film that hold it back. Like, that is not the problem. The problem is they microwaved a script from writers that weren't good enough. They gave it to a director that I don't think has a track record to show that he would be likely to do a good job with the film. And then they tried to fix it in post. It is the epitome of so much of what's wrong with the current era of the MCU. And honestly, I don't really have much faith that things are going to get better. Because what they've pitched to get me excited for Avengers movies is gimmicks. Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, returns as Doctor Doom. That is a gimmick. That is not what made Phase 3 so special. Long-form storytelling against multiple franchises with multiple characters that you love, culminating in big event films. Multiple big event films, each building on the previous one and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more personal, while also increasing the spectacle. This is a casting gimmick to get me excited because you didn't do the hard work of storytelling. Please, Kevin Feige, get it together, improve. I am losing faith. I built this channel on authentic, real excitement about what you were doing during Phase 3. I was there in May 2008 seeing Iron Man opening weekend. I want to be as excited. But something is so obviously broken, or has been broken in the process, since Endgame came out. And I hope they can fix it. I hope that they're not left with multiverse gimmicks as their only trick they have left. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. All that fun stuff. Now I'm going to get myself bummed out. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.